Okay, so now it's time to start sending out your first guest post outreach. So we've got some, you go through these first two examples here, and we actually have email templates that you can use. And I want to talk to you about how to leverage these templates to maximize the efficacy of your outreach campaign. Now, as we discussed, there are two different categories. There are blogs and there are magazines. So we actually have two different email templates and approaches to use for them accordingly. So when it comes to blogs, it's really important that you do not just straight up pitch them. It's really important, and in this email template, for example, it's all combined into one email, but something else you can try if you're having trouble landing guest posts successfully is actually even splitting this up into two emails separately, praising them and then pitching them in a second email. But in this one, it's all in one, but the praise part is extremely important. It shows you're not just like, you're giving them compliments as well as trying to sort of get something from them, but in a way that's giving them value. So it's gives the right kind of message that you're the kind of person that they might want to accept content from. So here's the template that we have. Hey name, love what you're doing on insert the site name here. You may have noticed my share and comment on the post, and this way you're referencing the fact that you've already engaged with them. And I was checking out your site today and found that this guest post you published, and you can insert a URL of a guest post to be like, hey, I can see that you have a guest post. And I'd love to be your next guest author. I've been brainstorming some topics that I think your readers would get a ton of value from, and then have some really, really awesome ideas here that are very much aligned with their brand and style. And to give you an idea of the quality I'll bring to your site, here are some other posts that I've published. Now, here you want to make sure you include your absolute best stuff. So hopefully they're extremely impressed when they check out these links. And then just say, let me know what you think, and I'd be happy to get started right away. So that's the approach for blogs. The approach for magazines is a little bit different, because basically you don't need to stroke their ego, because it's like a team and an organization more than a single person. So you just say, hey, person's name, I'm sure you get a ton of spammy submissions, so I'll get straight to the point. I'd love to submit a post for publishing on your site. Are you still accepting them? And then again, it's similar. I've been brainstorming some topics. And then just the exact same thing as you ended up here above as well. So you give them really effective ideas that are aligned with their brand and their style, and then you give them really, really compelling examples so that they're impressed with your past work and they're confident that you'll do a good job for them. Now, a lot of people tried these guest post campaigns and they give up after the first email. They say, hey, the person didn't respond, and then that's the end of their campaign. But there's actually different ways we want to respond based on, do they not reply? Do they say yes? Do they say no? We actually have different templates that we can use. So for example, in either case, if they don't reply, it's really easy just to send a check-in email. You can schedule this as a reminder to yourself. So for example, if you use a tool called Boomerang, it's a Gmail, it's a plugin that you can connect to Gmail, and you can click a little box to make it come back to you. When you send an email, it'll shoot it back to you if nobody responds, say a week later, right? And you can say, hey, I'm just checking in to see if you've received the email that I sent a few days ago. Did you have a chance to review my guest post ideas? I'd love to submit a post for publishing on your site. Let me know what you think, and I'd be happy to get started right away. And that one little move of reminding yourself to send a follow-up email will dramatically improve your success rate, because the more high-end and popular a site is, the more kinds of requests like that they get. And so it's really easy to lose track of different kinds of emails. Now, if they say yes, then you can move on to the next part of this lesson and move forward to the next step. But a lot of times they will say no, and there's going to be a couple different reasons why they say no. And accordingly, you'll want to respond. You don't want to just give up and be like, oh, I should never talk to this person again, right? If they say no because they don't like your ideas, usually they might say something like, well, we have lots of posts on that topic already, or that's not aligned with the types of posts we like to do. Then basically you can use this template to give them more ideas and better leverage your chance that they'll say yes to your second list of ideas. So you can just say, hey, thanks for your response. I'm open to any ideas that you'd like me to write about. What do you have in mind? You can even insert a couple other ideas if they've already given you specific feedback. Like, we don't accept posts about recipes, but we accept posts about exercise. Then you can say, hey, well, here's 3 ideas about exercise. But also just asking the question if they're not very specific, so you can get more information to give them ideas that align with their brand. And then just say, just let me know, and I'd be happy to get started right away. And another issue potentially is that they're no longer accepting guest posts. In that case, it's still good to follow up because there's a chance that in the future, say next month, they start accepting guest posts again. And at the very least, you're building relationships with other people in your niche, which is very, very important and can pay off really highly long term. So we recommend sending this template here, which says, hi, thanks for your response. I understand that you're not accepting guest posts. If you ever change your mind, just please let me know. I'm a big fan and would love to contribute a high quality post for your site. And let's keep in touch. Thanks. And again, it's mostly for relationship building, but there's also a chance that in the future they will remember your name and get back to you. One thing to remember, which I've said before, but I'm going to reiterate, is that it's very, very important that you not just, copy and paste this exact template every single time, right? You should add a little bit of your own personality. You should customize it a bit, and make it a real email and not very obviously a template. So that's an important element as you go through and use this. But we do have this template file for you that you can use, but it's the starting point and you should make it a real email, and that'll improve your success rate. Okay, so now let's walk through the actual process of reaching out to this site to submit your request for a guest post. So, for example, the first thing you're going to want to do is to check the guest posting guidelines. Now, we couldn't find one directly for this site here. However, if we should double check and go to the contact page, we actually found that there is a submit a guest post button here on the contact page. And it doesn't exactly have guest post guidelines, but it does have a very brief overview. And in many cases, they will have guest post guidelines. They will be very specific. They'll tell you exactly how to format it, the process, where to email it. And it's really important that you find that information and you follow it perfectly. Otherwise, they're very likely to ignore you. So sometimes what will happen is they will specifically request you to submit an idea. Sometimes they'll ask you to submit a finished article or a draft. And so it's important that you understand their process and you follow it accordingly. Now, if you come across a blog that asks you to submit the draft already, and then they don't approve it because it's not in line with them or whatever the reason is, well, it's not a total waste because you can very easily take that exact same article and submit it to very similar websites and leverage it even further. Okay, so now let's actually go through and submit our template. So for example, we can submit it here. However, we already have their direct email, and generally it's a little bit better to email them personally. They might ask us to go back and submit the same thing here, but let's start out by emailing them directly with our email that we have here, which is louise@paleomagazine.com. And so a couple things is that, one, you should ideally use Gmail. There's a couple different reasons that are pretty subtle, but basically, just overall, it's better email provider, less likely to go to spam, etc. And you should ideally, as we talked about before, get a email and use an email where it's using your name at yourdomain.com. It's just better and more professional and promotes your brand further. And so we can take our templates that we have. This one is a blog, so we'll take this one and add it to the email. And maybe say something like, I'd love to write for you. Write for your blog. And then, of course, we have to customize the template. How to customize the rest of it, of course, you want to add the site name. And actually, it's really important that you double check not just the URL, but also the name. Because actually for this example, the URL is slightly different. The domain is slightly different than the name of the brand. So you actually want to call it Paleo Flourish Magazine, because if we just inserted this URL, it would actually give the impression that we didn't actually really pay attention to the site itself. So we'll type in Paleo Flourish Magazine, and then we'll link to a specific, we'll put in the post title of the specific post that we commented on, that we talked about in the previous video. then we'll also link to a specific guest post that we've also found in the previous videos. Now, I won't actually go and make you painfully sit and watch me do that now, because I know it's kind of boring. So let's talk about the next part, which is actually really important, which is the idea and example part, because it's a little bit trickier to do correctly. So now when it comes to submitting ideas, the main idea is to make sure it aligns with their most popular posts and also the kinds of guest posts they've had in the past. So, for example, there's two things you can do. First off, you can just go through and search and find some of the guest posts that they've had. Again, we've given you some advanced search operators that you can search Google within this URL to find the guest posts. And then you can see the guest posts that they have and the types of topics that they accept them on and, the style, different things like that. Another really effective strategy is actually to look on buzzsumo.com, which you can search for their domain. And what happens is they give you the most popular posts on the site itself. So you can say, okay, well, this is the most popular post. This is the top couple most popular posts. These are good ideas for the types of topics that they've found very successful in the past. And so that gives us really good ideas for how to structure our own ideas. Basically, if you align it with what has been most successful for them in the past and what is most helpful and relevant to their audience, then you shouldn't have any problem whatsoever having them accept your guest post submission. Now, I know this might seem like a decent amount of work, especially if you go through and do it one by one for every single site that you found. So there's a couple things to keep in mind that can help speed this up. First off, you should focus most intensely on the tier 1 and tier 2 blogs before going to lower level tiers. But another idea to speed things up is to also brainstorm, and we have this tab here called guest post ideas to help you do that. Brainstorm different ideas within your niche, and you can basically use the same kind of process to come up with a relatively small list that you can reuse for outreach to several different blogs. So we can actually take this same kind of approach and see what works for a couple different of the tier 1 blogs, and then get some ideas and think, 5-minute microwave, and then some other kind of paleo recipe, right? Like that might be really compelling. Or some other kind of paleo dessert recipe apparently works. So we could take some ideas like that and we can record them here, and we can take those same lists and basically use the same ideas for every single blog that we reach out to in the same niche. So there's the slight danger, which is kind of rare, that you use the same 3 ideas for a couple different blogs and more than one accept the same topic. Now, what happens in that situation is you can easily circumvent that issue by just outsourcing the writing to 2 separate writers, and then the articles will inevitably be a bit different. Also, you can just brainstorm a list of more than 3 ideas. Say you easily brainstorm a list of like 10 ideas, and you can pick a different combination of 3 as you reach out to people. That's another way of getting around the problem as well. But again, it's pretty rare, not something to get hung up on. And this is going to be a way to help you do this process that much faster. So once we've done that, we can just grab these ideas here and add them to our post. We only have 2 in this example, but ideally you might want 3 or more. And once you've filled that in, the next section to fill in is the guest post examples. Ideally, it's a guest post, like a high-quality guest post on another site, but I realized that just starting, you're not going to have examples like that. So you can either point to your extremely high-quality articles on your own site or other locations, or just remove this altogether and start like this. It's less effective if you don't include examples, but, it's a certain percentage of people will still accept your guest post submissions without examples, or maybe they'll ask for them after your first email. So then you're going to just fill in your name, hit send, etc. Then the next step is to go to the tracking and click done on the pre-outreach column. It's our way of tracking our progress here, and go through and repeat the process for each one. Again, it's actually quite quick once you have a little practice, understand, and it becomes second nature to go boom, 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 different tabs, and then pasting in the different templates. It's actually really, really fast once you do it a couple of times. So once you've pitched them and filled out this spreadsheet, and you can keep track of whether you've been accepted or not here as well. And we've got a content status for the next video as we talk about getting the content outsourced. Keep in mind that the acceptance rate for this kind of outreach is actually probably lower than you'd think. So in our experience, it can be from like 3 to 8%, and you might have been expecting it to be 50%. So the key takeaway there is to not be discouraged if you get a bunch of no's or a bunch of not responses, right? So sitting down and, for example, batching this and sending it out to 20 to 30 blogs at once, you might get one yes, you might get a couple yeses, or you might get no yeses, and then you might want to wait a couple of days, send the follow-up templates that we've talked about, which we have here. Again, the different kinds of responses based on if they don't respond, or if they say yes or no, or what have you. And then send to the next batch, and basically just keep going. You'll get a certain percentage to reply, but again, a majority will actually say no or not respond, which is totally fine. Just use the process that we've set in place, and you'll get a consistent percentage of them to give you the opportunity to write guest posts. But one thing to keep in mind is you don't want to sit down and do this for like 200 places at once, because what happens then is, say it's 8% of 200, which is 16 guest posts, and then you're going to outsource 16 guest posts for tier 1 blogs, which means really high quality posts. That's really hard to do in terms of having a fast turnaround time, and it would be very hard on your writers. The quality wouldn't be as good. So basically, just make regular progress on chunks of sites, every single week or month, and you'll get a regular opportunity to submit guest posts. And the next video, we're going to be talking about specifically how you can outsource the guest posts so it doesn't suck up all your time.